महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परं ब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। ॐ भद्रं कर्णेभिः शृणुयाम देवाः भद्रं पश्येमाक्षभिर्यजत्राः स्थिरैरङ्गैः तुष्टुवागुंसस्तनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितै यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste friends. A hearty welcome to one and all for the today's 22nd session of Advaita Prakarana of Mandukya Upanishad with Karikas. In the previous classes, we have studied the mantras from 26 to 30. In today's session, we will be studying the Karikas from 31 to 35. To explain these, we have with us Srimati Smita Pai, Mr. Venkatesh Prasad, Srimati Sharmila Bhaktaram, and Srimati Neelima. As usual, today's moderation, presentation, and deeper inputs will be given by Dr. Hegde sir. Let us begin the today's session with quick recap of Karikas from 26 to 30 of previous 21st session by Srimati Mamata Shankar. Over to you, ma'am.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. The recap of verses, the Mandukya Karika verses 26 to 30 of Mandukya Upanishad, 3rd chapter, Advaita Prakaranam, can be categorized as below. First one is Shastric analysis to prove Atma is self-evident. Second is logical analysis to claim world is seemingly real, followed by Shunya versus creation explanation. The fourth one is dream example to seemingly real world. Then the last one, reiteration of non-dual Brahman. In the next slide, verse 26 is based on a Brihadaranyaka Upanishad quotation in 3.9.26, which divides the whole universe as Murta and Amurta Prapancha. The gross, tangible, concrete universe, like all the objects that we see, smell, touch, hear, taste, and our gross body is Murta Prapancha. And the mind, thoughts, emotions, knowledge, ignorance, and doubts are subtle and not tangible. They are abstract and are called Amurta Prapancha. So technically, gross body is Murta Prapancha and subtle and causal body of living beings is Amurta Prapancha. In the next slide, Gaudapada in the mantra says, Atma or Brahman is never experienceable as a particular thing and is not happening at a specific time. It cannot be comprehended by any means. In short, anything that we know is not Brahman. Since Atma or Brahman is not an object of experience that can be easily grasped, Gaudapada says in the mantra, we should negate every object of experience, that is, Murta and Amurta Prapancha experiences through Neti Neti until there is nothing to negate or there is blankness or nothingness. And we are aware of this blankness also because the consciousness principle or Brahman illumines or reveals the absence of things or nothingness, and this Brahman I am, which is all the time experienced by us as self-evident pure consciousness as the subject. For example, the present session we are in and trying to understand In that, I, the Atma, is self evident, and it is because of I, the Atma or Brahman, I'm able to learn and understand more about the session. So, I, the Atma or Brahman, shines or ever evident as Aham Aham or I am in and through this learning experience, and in fact, every experience in the world. Brahman is the ultimate reality or essence of everything, just like gold is the essence of various gold ornaments like bangles, necklaces, to name a few. In the next slide, after elaborating on scriptural analysis to prove self-evident Brahman in verse 26, Gaudapada, with logical reasoning, explains that world or creation is mithya or is an appearance in this verse 27. He says, Sat Brahman, that is, ever-existent Brahman, created universe through Maya, and Brahman is not a cause of anything in reality. In the next slide, he also highlights logical problems associated with if suppose Brahman created universe. First one is, say Brahman actually created the universe, then Brahman is the cause, and any cause involves time and subject to change, which involves the sixfold changes. That would mean Brahman has birth and decay. Brahman, the absolute or ultimate reality, becomes a changing reality, which is a logical problem. Then in the next slide, just like seed is the cause for the tree, and that seed is the result of another cause, that is previous tree. Similarly, if Brahman is the cause of the universe, there must be something that has resulted in Brahman, and it goes on, never ending. And logically, this does not sound right either. So, logical conclusion would be Brahman is neither the cause nor the effect, and if Brahman cannot be the cause of real creation, it must be an apparent cause or seem to be the cause and not the actual cause. In the next slide, in rope snake example, snake is only an appearance caused by ignorance of rope. So rope only appears as the cause of snake. Similarly, Brahman can never create the universe. It appears as universe with names and forms through Maya. However, the apparent universe appears as real for self-ignorant person identifying with body-mind. In the next slide, in verse 28, Gaudapada says, Asato, that is from Asad Vastu or non-existent cause, neither real universe nor unreal creation can originate. For example, if there is a rope, we can mistaken it to snake or something else. If there is something, then that can be mistaken to something else. But if there is nothing, how can something come out of it? So Gaudapada says, from nothing, from shunyam, from the void, there can be no real creation and no apparent creation either. Therefore, whether you tell the cause is Sat or Asat, real creation is neither possible from Brahman nor is it possible from Asat Vastu. In other words, there is no real creation, only an apparent or appearance of creation by Maya is seen. This is called Ajativada, which Sir has talked about several times in our sessions also. This is similar to saying Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya, that is, Brahman alone is real. The world is only an appearance. In the next slide, Gaudapada says it is possible for something to appear without actual origination, and there have been many examples to support this. And one of the most powerful example is the dream world, and that is given in this verse 29. Dualistic world consists of different kinds of places, objects, people, so on, and it has ETU, that is experienceability, transactability, and utility. And it seems so real to us. Just because it has ETU and seems so real, we cannot conclude it is real. Now let us look at the dream example or dream world in the next slide. In the dream, all the places, objects, people we see in the dream are projected by the dreamer's mind alone. It is the mind alone which illumines the entire dream world. Dream also has ETU, and dream world is perceived as real in the dream state. When we wake up, it is only when we wake up we realize the dream world seemed real only in the dream. It is only seemingly real and it is mithya. Similarly, in the waking state, The dualistic world is projected by the mind as real. Brahman or Atma through Maya, through our minds, appear as the universe or the dualistic world. World, as we just mentioned a while back, has ETU. Whenever there is experience, there is an experiencer and experienced object. And there is duality, and it is Mithya. And Satyam is Advaitam, which is Brahman and Brahman alone. Brahman is not a matter of objectification. Resolving duality or Dvaitam through spiritual sadhanas, we realize Advaitam. In the last slide, Gaudapada concludes the explanation associated with non-dual Brahman with this verse 30. The non-dual mind appears as the dream world or duality in the dream. There is no doubt in this regard as we experience this every day. When we wake up, we realize it is the mind alone that is projecting the dualistic dream world. Similarly, in this waking state also, it is that non-dual Brahman through our mind appears as this duality or the dualistic world or the world with ETU. By consistent practice of Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, we can get established or realize that non-dual Brahman and claim that Brahman I am. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Mamta, for a very excellent summary of all the Karikas we studied in the last class. To present each of these Karikas requires a lot of effort, because to understand these cryptic verses, but to do 5 of them is a great sadhana indeed, and I will encourage more and more people to do this exercise. Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. We are now concluding the Advaita Prakaranam, and the present discussion is about the cause of samsara. And Gaudapadacharya tells us again and again, wherever there is Dvaita, there is samsara. For example, in deep sleep, I don't experience anything. There is no question of any problems. There is no problems whatsoever. So there is no samsara. The moment I go into dream, or the moment I wake up, all my problems are there. And this is called the co-presence or the co-absence of the mind. Whenever the mind is there, either in dream or in the waking state, this is called Anvaya Vyatireka. Anvaya means co-presence. Vyatireka means absence. When the mind is absent, no problems. When the mind is present, either in dream or waking, you have all these problems. That is what is called samsara. Now, therefore, the problem lies in the mind. If the problem is in the mind, the solution is in the mind. Somebody has very nicely given this term, not somebody, it is Guru Nanak Dev himself who said, Manjit Jagjit. So in today's terms, in today's classes, we are looking at a few terms. What is this Atma Satyanubodha? Let us be clear about this term. What is Asparsha Yoga? What is Amani Baba? These are the terms we should be very clear in today's class. And I'll be just giving you an overall introduction. And the speakers of today's class will be explaining these terms. The first is a beautiful verse from the Amrita Bindu Upanishad, just as the first line of which says, Mana eva manushyanam karana bandha mokshe. You've heard this many times. The mind alone is the cause of all my problems. But here is the answer. The mind can be trained to find a solution to all my problems. This finding a solution to all the problems of the mind is called Amani Baba. What is Amani Baba? We will see in today's class, and we will understand in the form of a few stories and few examples. The first story is about a certain king who was sitting in all his luxury. It was in the afternoon. After a heavy meal, he goes to sleep, deep sleep, and after the deep sleep is interrupted by a dream. And in that dream, he dreams that he is a beggar, and he suffers the pangs of hunger, the pangs of humiliation. And when he wakes up, he sees the contrasting luxury and the presence of opulence all around him. He has a very basic doubt. Now, was my experience of dream, was that real? Or the present experience that I have, the rich king that I am, which one is real? Very fortunately for him, he had a great master. And the great master was none other than Ashtavakra. And Ashtavakra gives a very strange statement. He says, if I can use a Hindi word, dono asat hai. Both of them are unreal. Now, if my dream experiences are unreal, which I had a real experience of, and if my waking experience is also unreal, if both my dream and my waking experience is unreal, then what is real? That's where we have the whole Ashtavakra Gita. The whole Ashtavakra Gita is a dialogue between the master and the student. And all of us who have had Pariksha Lokan Karmachitan, who have experienced what all we can accomplish through the successes in the world and see its utter futility. That is when we go to a guru, and that is when we analyze our own examples. And what is the analysis? The analysis is what is called Vichara. I'm going through suffering. For example, the king went through intense suffering of being a beggar. What is the cause of my suffering? The cause of the king's suffering is the ignorance of the reality. The reality was that he was actually a king. He identified with the dream body, and because of the identification with the dream body, he went through so much of suffering. And where was the suffering? The suffering was in the mind. Once we wake up, we have our own problems on waking up. Similarly, it looks like the world and all the people in my life are the cause of all my problems. But ultimately, if you see, all the problems lie in the mind. Why? Even though I have so many problems, the moment I fall asleep, suddenly there is no problem whatsoever. Now, the whole of Vedanta is to tell us to discover the essential truth. Like, for example, the whole problem of the rope snake is misidentification with the rope and to wrongly project it as a snake. If I can discover the truth of the rope snake, then I discover the rope. And that condition is called Atma Satyanubodha. And we will see what is this Amani Bhava. First, we will come to Atma Satyanubodha. Atma Satyan Anubodha means, Anu means after. After what? Guru and Shastra's Upadesha, I understand my true nature. I get what is called Atma Jnanam. Atma Ajnanam is because I am not aware of my true nature. And because I am not aware of my true nature, I go through this whole process of samsara, just like a person who's not able to identify the true nature of the rope and projects it to be a snake and suffers. Now, what does a guru and what do the Shastras say? All of us, if you analyze yourself, we discover there are two I's. Bhagavan Ramana calls it I and I. Aham and aham. The lower I is called the ego or the ahankara, which is the karta, bhokta, which is finite, and all my sufferings are because of my identification with the lower me. In me also, there is something of the turiya or the higher, which is in and through all the states, that which is there at all stages. That higher state, which is the constant witness, is the Atma. Our whole spiritual sadhana is to discover that there are two and move from the identification of the limited karta bhokta to the akarta abhokta. And this discovery is the discovery of the Mahavakya Aham Brahmasmi. I am that. And after some time, to be established in this factor, this is called Atma Satyanubodha. If Atma's Jnanam is not there, there is a problem in my heart. This problem within my heart is called the Hridaya Granthi. Because I do not know my true nature, I have what is called avidya. I have incomplete knowledge. And because of this incomplete knowledge, I experience limitations. I identify with my body, I identify with my mind. I experience so many forms of limitations. A desire comes in my mind. If I have more money, if I have more power, if I have more health, if I have more of this and that, that is what is called karma. And once karma comes, can you keep quiet? You have to work on your karma. So what is Hridaya Granthi? Ajnanam, Adhyasa leading to karma. Karma leads to karma. Karma leads to punarjanma. Whenever there is Atma Satyanubodha, that means when the Guru is able to give you that knowledge, a miracle happens. And this miracle that happens within my heart is called Vidyate Hridaya Granthi. The knot in my heart is broken. Chidyante Sarva Samshaya. All the doubts in my mind, particularly about my true nature, is gone. And another miracle is Kshiyate cha asya karmani. All the karmas that bind me because of my identification with my body mind get evaporated. Tasmin drishte paravare. All of us wake up every morning, every time we get up from sleep. But when we go through Guru and Shastra, one day we wake up to what is called Prabodha Samaya. This is what the teachers say, Uttishtata Jagrata. This awakening is not an ordinary awakening. This awakening is to the identification of I am Atma Brahma and to be able to be established in that. And the more convinced that I am of my true nature, and this happens through each of our satsangs. I am not this limited body mind. I have believed that enough and I have suffered enough. I am convinced by my teacher's teaching that I am Atma Brahma. Let this teaching be established. And this knowledge will be brought in today's class. What is this Atma Satyanubodha? What is this exactly? In the Bhagavad Gita, this is what is called a Sthita Prajna. And Sri Krishna, Arjuna asks Sri Krishna, what are the characteristics of a Sthita Prajna? And Sri Krishna gives a brilliant answer in verse 55 of the second chapter. Atmanevatmana tushtaha. That person who's able to discover that I am Atma, Brahma, and is established in it. And once you become established in it, what happens? Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogata. We go back to the mind. The mind has the ability to generate various disorders. Various karmas arise in your mind. Prajahati sarvan kaman. Prajahati means completely drop all the desires that happens in my mind. And that happens because my mind is saturated with the fact of I am Atma Brahma. Atman evatmana tushtaha. Such a quality is called a Sthita Prajna. Today we will understand another beautiful term, what is called Amani Baba. Amani Baba means like Manjeet, Jagjit. It is not, there are various levels of Amani Baba. Initially, we love to control our mind. That means I have got a problematic mind and I have got a useful mind. The useful mind and the useful programs I retain, the wrong programming, the wrong conditioning I remove. And that process is called Mano Nigraha. And the culmination of that process is called mano nasha. Let us not understand amani or mano nasha as destruction of the mind. Sometimes you see that in small children. Small children, one day Jesus was asked this question by a group of people: what qualities should I have in order to enter into your Father's kingdom? There were so many great people around him at that time, including the chief priests or the big priests of the great Jewish temple of Jerusalem. He looks at all of them, he bypasses all of them, picks up a little child, and he says, can you be spontaneous like this? And if you have this childlike quality, it is these qualities which are the passport to my Father's kingdom. And what are these childlike qualities which make an ordinary person a Buddha? Ordinariness is his extraordinariness. A Buddha's greatness is that he's so ordinary. He has no idea of how he should be. He is simply spontaneous. He lives on the spur of the moment. He has no special character. That means there is no straight jacket of how he should be. He does not limit himself. He is authentic to that moment. We completed the Tripti Vipa, one beautiful exercise that we studied, where the entire Tripti Vipa Prakaranam was based on one mantra of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which goes like this: Atmanam Ched Vijaniyat Ayam Asmiti Purushaha. When I discover my true nature, then what happens? Kim Icchan Kasya Kamaya Shariram Anusamjvared. What desire arises in my mind? What is there to be done? What is that I have to push this body to accomplish for such a person who has discovered his true nature? A spiritually evolved person. Such a person attains to, from Mano Nigraha to Mano Nasha, through Atma Satyanubodha, he attains to what is called Amani Bhava. When the mind becomes mithya, the world so glamorous or real. There is nothing to accomplish in this world because I don't see anything, no real stuff in that. And when I'm so complete in myself, there is nothing to do, there is nowhere to go, because I have discovered my Purnatvam. And such a person is Akarta Abhukta. The 17th verse of the Upadesha Sara goes like this, and this is another beautiful description of what is this Amani Bhava. That is why they say Bhagwan Ramana's ideas are so direct. That is why we need to re-look at these Upadesha Sara verses again and again. Manasantu kim, margane krite. Manasantu kim. What is this mind? Margane means inquire. If you inquire and find out, you will make one wonderful discovery. Naiva manasam marge arjava. You will discover there is no real thing called the mind. The mind is only an appearance. The mind is pseudo. Something else, Atma, has been masquerading as the mind. That means you go from the unreal mind to the real Atma. And this, what he says, is when the mind is bypassed, you see the reality very clearly. Again, and this is from the Upadesha Sara, and this verse, which goes like this: Nashta manasaha. That person who is able to overcome the problematic mind, Utkrishta yoginaha. Swami Arambhavananda calls Utkrishta Yoginaha as the super deluxe yogi, as the highest yogi. Nashta Manasa Utkrishta Yoginaha. Krityamastikim. What is there to be done for such a person? That means such a person who has attained to Amani Bhava through Atma Satyanubodha. There is nothing to do, there is nowhere to go. Only the ego wants to accomplish. Once you understand that I am not the ego, you attain to a state of sahaja, a state of spontaneous. Then you discover the law of least effort. What does the law of least effort says? The law of least effort says do less, accomplish more. And like Bhagavan Ramana or Gautama Buddha, do nothing, accomplish everything. If you see nature, nature functions with effortless ease. If nature demonstrates what is called sahaja, spontaneous, grass grows, fish swim, birds fly. We don't see an effort. Flowers bloom, the earth spins, the sun shines. If I can be in harmony with nature, that means this is what is called being sahaja. And what Nike says, just do it. Whenever I'm feeling of I am doing it, that is when the mind comes. Wherever there is the mind, you will see a lot of effort is wasted when you seek acceptance, when you seek validation, when you seek appreciation. You have the fear of being a nobody and the greed to be a somebody. The ego wants acceptance. Learn to accept this moment as it is. I am responsible for this moment. There is no need to prove anything to anybody. Be absolutely defenseless. What happens when a person gets Brahma Vidya? When you understand Atma Satyanubodha, and then the mind is no longer the craving mind. So there is no desire to accomplish anything. Why? There is no desirer. There is no object of desire. And such a person has no struggle with the body. There is nothing to accomplish. Finally, we attain to what is called a Sparsha Yoga. That means because I see everything as mithya, including my mind as mithya, I give less importance to everything in the world. And when I give less importance to the world, I give more importance to my true nature or Atma. I discover I am so big that nothing in the world can really touch me. I become untouchable in that sense. This untouchability means I cannot be affected by anything that happens in the world. I am the only reality. Everything else is of a lower order of reality. And this is going to be the essence of the Advaita Prakaranam that we will be studying in this class and in the next class. Remember, in the 14th verse of the second chapter, Sri Krishna says, Matra Sparshasu Kaunteya Sitoshna Sukha Dukkadaya Agama Pahino Anityaha Tam Stitikshasva Bharata. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. So these are the terms we will be studying in today's class. The opening speaker is Smita Pai. Smita, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. In the previous two Karikas, Gaudapadacharya said, mind is appearing in the form of dreamer's duality and mind alone appears in the form of waker's duality. As long as there is duality, there is fear and insecurity. In duality alone, time and space are present. In time, change is inevitable. Whenever there is change, birth, death, and loss are inevitable. This is also experientially proved. In both waking state and dream, the duality exists. In deep sleep state, duality does not exist, and there is no samsara. Mind alone appears in the form of waker's duality. Mind alone appears in the form of dreamer's duality. Therefore, other than mind, dreamer's duality and waker's duality does not exist. This was a proposition given in the previous two Karikas. Now Shankaracharya himself revises the question, what is a pramanam in support of that? What is a proof in support of that? That is a proposition. Therefore, Shankaracharya says, Rajju Sarpavat Vikalpana Rupam Dvaita Rupena Manaha Tatra Kim Pramana iti Anvaya Vyatireka Lakshanam Anumana Maha Katam. Rajju Sarpavat, like the rope snake, Vikalpana Rupam Dvaita Rupena Manaha Eva. So, the appearing duality, both in waking and dream state, Manaha Eva, is none other than the mind alone. In short, there is no world other than mind is a statement. With the 30th verse, Gaudapadacharya concludes the central teaching of the third chapter, the Advaita Prakaranam, through which he established that Brahman alone is non-dual and it will ever be non-dual, and if at all there is duality, it is only Mithya Nama Rupa, it is not Satyam. So Advaita is Mithya, Advaitam alone is Satyam. This he established by negating the creation. From verse 31st onwards, Gaudapadacharya talks about the cause of samsara and its remedy. The verse goes like this. Mano drishyamidam dvaitam yatkinchit sacharacharam manaso yamani bhave dvaitam naivopalabhyate. Gaudapadacharya wants to point out that all the problems of samsara are because of Dvaita Darshanam, that is, perception of duality, and ignoring Advaitam, that is the truth. And this, all the Upanishads repeatedly declare, wherever there is Dvaita Darshanam, there will be samsara because of raga, dvesha, pravritti, and nivritti. Now, what is pravritti and nivritti? If it is a liked object, I run after the object. If it is a disliked object, I run away from the object. Running after is called pravritti and running away is called nivritti. So lifelong we will be running away and towards, and this will create a lot of karma and karma palam like agami karma, sanchit karma. Then there is punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. This is one root of samsara. Or in other words, as long as I see duality, there is division. Division here means limitation by desha and kala. As long as space-time limitation is there, mortality cannot be avoided. Therefore, there will be a constant sense of insecurity. The root cause of samsara is Dvaita Darshanam, and this is confirmed also when we go to Sushupti, that is deep sleep state. In deep sleep state, Dvaita Darshanam, that is perception of duality, is absent. By this Anvaya Vyatireka logic, we conclude Yatra Yatra Dvaita Darshanam, Tatra Tatra Samsaraha, Yatra Yatra Dvaita Ada Darshana Abhavaha, Tatra Tatra Na Samsaraha, Tasmat Dvaita Darshanam Eva Samsarasya Karanam. Now we have diagnosed the problem. Gaudapadacharya probes Dvaita Darshanam happens only when the mind is active. In Jagrata Avastha, Swapna Avastha, the mind is active, there is perception of duality. In Sushupti, the mind is dormant, dissolved, and passive, and therefore the root cause is the mind. That is why it is said, as Dr. Sir has explained earlier, Manaha eva manushyanam karanam bandha mokshayoho. If you tackle the mind, samsara is tackled. And this is introduced in this 31st verse. This entire dualistic verse consisting of charam, moving, acharam, non-moving, the living and the non-living. So this chara, Dvaita prapancha is manodrishyam, is perceived by the mind, is presented by the mind. The mind alone imports Dvaita prapancham for me. So manodrishyam idam Dvaitam. By introducing Dvaita prapancha, mind is introducing samsara for me. And therefore, if you want to tackle samsara and Dvaita prapancha, tackle the mind. Therefore, Gaudapadacharya tells in the second line, Manasaha amani bhave. When a mind becomes a non-mind, when the mind is dissolved, resolved, destroyed, which is otherwise called manonashaha. Gaudapadacharya calls tackling or conquering of mind as amani bhavaha. Since the word manonashaha creates some confusion, the ideal word is manojayaha. When the mind is negated, eliminated, dvaitam naiva upalabhyate, one will not have duality, which is regularly proved by the deep sleep state mind. Mind is temporarily eliminated in sleep because the mind resolves in sleep. Whenever mind is resolved, I find Dvaitam is not there. From that, we can extend the logic and say, Manonashe sati Dvaitam naiva upalabhyate. There will never be perception of Dvaitam. From there, we have to extend samsara will not be there. Therefore, what is the goal now? Manonashaha or amani bhavaha is the goal because mind is a cause of problem. Therefore, mind has to be eliminated. Now, the question comes, how do you bring about manonashaha or amani bhavaha? This we can see which Gaudapadacharya deals with in the following verses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Smita, for a nice explanation of this Karika, which talks about duality is there only when the mind is active. And therefore, what is the solution? Amani Bhava, which should be understood as initially Mano Nigraha, or a more beautiful understanding of what is called Mano Nasha. Without, the mind cannot be destroyed, mind need not be destroyed, but it is a sense of mind. As I said, now the mind cannot be destroyed. The body can be destroyed. The mind is like the SIM card. It is non-material. It goes from one body to another. Even in pralayam, it is there. So the mind cannot be destroyed. The mind need not be destroyed. You will hear it in the next talk, what is called Atma Satyanubodha. Very important. The mind should not be destroyed because even a realized person needs a mind. But what you need to do is to make the mind mithya, or to see the mind as Brahman. Just like once you get spiritual knowledge, you still see, or the worldly knowledge, you still see the sun setting and sun rising. But now, although my experience is something, I know the reality which is other than my experience. All great masters like Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa or Bhagwan Ramana give an example of how to dissolve the mind. And they give the example of when you are fast asleep, this is called Manolaya. Temporarily, you are one with the Lord. But as you will see in the later Karika, there's a great distinction between Manolaya and Manonasha. The example for Manonasha is given of a salt doll. A group of salt dolls are having a great description of how deep is the sea. Well, all of them are speculating. One of the dolls go to actually experience the depths of the sea. And as you go deeper to the sea, then what happens? You dissolve and you become one with. The more you try to understand the mind dissolves into the Atma and becomes one with the Atma. Shri Venkatesh Prasad will explain the next two Karikas. Venkatesh, please.
Thank you, sir. Harivom, Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Karika 3.32 talks about the cessation of mental activity. The Karika goes like this. Atma Satyanu Bodhena na sankalpayate yada amanastam tada yati grahya abhave tadagraham. We may recollect the beautiful dissection that Sir made about the word Atma Satyanu Bodha and proceed further. Here, Gaudapada is presenting a very subtle Vedantic message. That message is, because of the mind, we are experiencing the world of duality. The mind is functioning as the mind because the mind is experiencing the world of duality. Next slide, sir. When you analyze whether the mind is because of the world or the world is because of the mind, you discover a peculiar truth that the mind and the world are interdependent. Both of them do not have an existence of their own. So, both of them are mithya. Both of them borrow existence from something else other than the mind and the world. How to know this? The mind consists of thoughts. For every thought, there is a corresponding object in the external world. At the individual level, the mind is nothing but a thought, and the world is nothing but an object. Take a part thought, and there is a part object. Next slide, sir. There is a series of thoughts and the corresponding objects. Therefore, thoughts and objects are there. all the possible thoughts put together is the mind, and all the possible objects put together is the world. The mind and the world can be understood as thought and object alone. So, both of them are mithya, borrowing existence from Turiyam, the Atma alone, that lends existence simultaneously to both thought and object. They both rise together in the waking state and in the dream state. In deep sleep, both the thoughts and the objects resolve simultaneously. You cannot have one existing with the other resolving. When people meditate, they try to resolve all the objects. When all the objects are removed, all the thoughts also resolve. When all the thoughts are resolved, there is no mind, and then the meditator dozes off. The mind cannot survive if some object or the other, either external or internal, is not visualized. Next slide, sir. Swami Dayananda says, trying to tackle the world alone will not work, and tackling the mind alone will also not work. It will end up in some other problem. So, trying to understand the root of both the world and the mind alone will help. That root is Atma, the Satyam. When the truth Atma is known as Satyam, the world and the mind are understood as Mithya. The world and the mind will continue to be experienced. It will be like a movie on the screen. The screen is Atma. You do not try to handle them independently. You do not negate them also. You only deflate the mind and the world of their reality. You allow them to be and continue to experience them, but they cannot cause any samsara because mithya cannot touch the satyam. The mind and the world are two and the adhishtanam is one. The dream object and the dream thought are two, but the adhishtanam is one, the waker. One Atma alone is appearing both as experiencer and the experienced. By gaining the knowledge of the truth of the mind and world with the help of a guru and shastra that is known to be Atma, the Turiyam, the mind does not report duality anymore. Never look for that Atma because the seeker is the sought himself itself. Because of the knowledge, thereafter, the world will not be the world, but it will be the Atma with the world disguise, and it is the Atma with the mind disguise. The mind becomes non-mind or the mind is falsified. Both the mind and the world are falsified simultaneously. Next slide, sir. In the absence of objects, there is the absence of thought. There is no such thing called world other than Atma. A pot can be negated by two methods. One is by breaking the pot. The other method is to look at the pot carefully and know there is no pot but only clay. Holding the pot and proclaiming that there is no pot is wisdom. There is nothing but clay alone, and only the name pot is used for the particular form for transaction. Similarly, a Vedantin looking at the world loudly proclaims that there is no world. It is only Atma with different names and forms. Just because there are many names, there are not many things. There is no mind or world, but there is only Atma. With the next slide, we will go to the next Karika 33, which deals with cessation of mind and birthlessness, that is Ajam. The Karika goes like this. Akalpakam ajam gnanam gneyabhinnam prachakshate brahma gneyam ajam nityam ajena ajam vibudhyate. Next slide, sir. Another very profound and technical concept is presented in this verse. Here, Gaudapadacharya says in the second line that in the beginning of the spiritual journey, one considers himself as the Atma, the one who is pursuing the knowledge. And he looks upon Brahman as something to be realized later. So, when a person is attempting to realize Brahman, at the time, what is his assumption? Brahman is an object to be realized at some time in future. So, Brahman is to be realized, and who am I? I am the realizer. Thus, we start with Atma Brahma Bheda. I am the knower, and Brahman is to be known. Even in the 13th chapter, Lord Krishna says, Neyam yattat pravakshyami yat gnatva amrutam ashnute. I shall talk about that Brahman which you have to know as though Brahman is an object. And Mandukya Upanishad itself says in 7th mantra, Sa Atma Saha Vigneya. That is the Paramatma that is to be known. So, initially, a knower-known division is introduced. That is said in second line. Brahma Gneyam. A Brahman is the Gneyam, Atma is the Gnata. But that is until Mahavakyam comes. Next slide, sir. All these expectations are shattered by the Mahavakyam. Tat Tvam Asi. You happen to be that Brahman which you are waiting to realize. Therefore, in the first line, the Upanishad says, Neya Bhinnam. That means, I, the knower, am not different from Brahman to be known. Therefore, knower and known are one and the same. And therefore, when the Atma Gnanam or Brahma Gnanam takes place, which is one and the same, Chaitanyam, Gaudapadacharya says, Chaitanyam Atma knows the Chaitanyam Brahma with the help of Chaitanyam. And even though knowing is presented here as a process, we should remember it is not a process because Chaitanyam need not be known at a particular point of time. Chaitanyam is always evident. What is the proof? If Chaitanyam is not there, you cannot know anything else. Next slide, sir. In this complex Karika, Gaudapada is giving 4 descriptions regarding Atma Chaitanyam or the consciousness which is the nature of oneself. And Atma Chaitanyam is here called Ajam Gnanam. Ajam indicates birthlessness. First one is Ajam Gnanam Akalpakam, the Swarupa Gnanam. The consciousness of oneself is divisionless. The second description is Ajam Gnanam Gneya Bhinnam Bhavati. This pure consciousness is non-different from the thing to be known by the seeker. By the seeker is very important. Things are to be known by the seeker. So, Gneya Bhinnam is the second description. The third description is Ajam Gnanam Brahma Gneyam Bhavati. Pure consciousness has got Brahman as the ultimate object of knowledge to be known. And if you join all these 3 together, Atma wants to know Brahman. Brahman is non-different from Atma. Therefore, Atma wants to know itself. Now, if Atma wants to know itself, what is the instrument with which it will know? Atma is Pramatha, Atma is Prameyam, and then what is the instrument or Pramanam? For that, Gaudapadacharya says Atma itself is the Pramanam, that is instrument also. Ajena Ajam Vibudhyate is the 4th description. Beginningless consciousness knows beginningless consciousness with or through the instrument of beginningless consciousness. Next slide, sir. In short, consciousness is knower, consciousness is known, and consciousness is instrument also. Therefore, Ajena Ajam Vibudhyate. Ajaha Atma, Ajena Atmana, Ajam Atmanam Vibudhyate. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venkatesh ji. Excellent explanation of 2 very important and very difficult Karikas. In the earlier Karikas, we discovered that the mind is the cause of all the problems, and therefore we need to be able to get to the state of Amani Bhava. And that, how do we get to the state of Amani Bhava to overcome the mind, to be able to understand my true nature as Atma, Atma Satya Anubodha through Guru and Shastra. Now, again, let me go back to Bhagwan Ramana, who gives a very simple and a direct message. Ahaminasha Baji, Aham Taya, Spuriti Rutsvayam Paramapurna Sat. So, according to Bhagwan, if you want to discover your true nature, you have to destroy the ego. Ahaminasha Baji. You have to crush the ahami, the ego. Aham Taya. Then, by itself, spontaneously, the higher I manifests. Like a cloud, it was the real me was being covered. It seemed to be covered. Spurati Ritsvayam Paramapurna Sat. The Satchit Ananda will manifest itself. Now, once the mind is not there, how do I get this knowledge? So the teaching is you don't have to do anything. To get this knowledge, it is not, you don't require any instrument to get the knowledge. It can happen by itself. And that was explained in the next Karika. So this is the uniqueness of Atma Jnanam. There is no triputi of Pramata, Prameya, Pramanam. Once there is a Mani Bhava, the I am. To know everything else, I will need my mind and sense organs. To know I am, this knowledge of my conscious existence does not need any instrument of knowledge, does not need the mind. In other teaching, this is brought out as vritti vyapti and phala vyapti. So what is the role of Guru and Shastra? The Guru and Shastras is to introduce not something new, but to introduce that which is always there, always experienced. I have always experienced my true nature as conscious existence, and to help me to identify I am that and not this limited body mind. The last one, the next Karika will be explained by Sharmila. Sharmila, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Nigrihitasya manaso nirvikalpasya dhimataha prachara satu vigneya sushupti anyona tatsamaha. The behavior of the enlightened, disciplined mind, which is a non-perceiver, should be known. The behavior in sleep is different. It is not similar to that. In this verse, Sri Gaudapadacharya states that the behavior of the Jnani's mind, which is a non-perceiver, should be known. This enlightened mind differs from the mind in sleep or sushupti. Next verse. Nature of the mind and the world. We know the mind and the world are both mithya and interdependent. Humans, in their quest for peace, security, and happiness, spend their whole life trying to adjust the world. And when this doesn't work, they are trying to adjust the mind. And again, they come back to adjusting the world as they cannot find the right. This is a continuous and futile effort, life after life, to solve the problem of samsara. Tampering with the mithya mind and world is not a solution. So, what is the solution? The next slide. The mind and the world have to be understood from the root or the satyam or the atma level. The solution lies in verse 32. Next slide. The solution lies with the knowledge and understanding of atma. With the knowledge of this atma, mind is made into non-mind, world is made into non-world. Non-mind is nothing but atma plus the nama rupa. And non-world is again nothing but atma plus nama rupa. We all know the rope snake example. With the knowledge of the rope, we can put the rope snake in its place. Next slide, please. The jnani knows that both the mind and the world are atma alone. He experiences duality, but he does not report it. He realizes the experience duality is nothing but Atman. Next slide. Sri Gaudapadacharya asks, what is the difference between the mind in deep sleep and the enlightened mind? The only similarity is that both minds are non-dual. But the condition of the mind in sleep is shrouded by ignorance. It is complete blankness. It knows nothing. There is consciousness, but no self-awareness. The seed of everything in samsara is present, but not experienced. Everything is in unmanifest state. When he wakes up, duality returns. Though mind is physically dissolved, this dissolution is only temporary. The condition of mind is very different. This mind has permanently resolved duality. Everything is Atma. He sees the golden thread of unity which underlies everything. In dream and waking, he sees this unity. does not come back to duality when he wakes up, as this unity continues. He is transformed internally by knowledge. Swami Sarvapriyananda points to the example of the water and the wave. The jnani sees the one water behind the 1,000 waves, but the ajnani sees the waves and not the water. Next slide, please. When the jnani realizes that everything is only one reality called Atman, then he starts viewing the world as a movie. He allows this movie to continue on the screen called Atman. He cannot stop the movie, but he can respectfully do his duties and not give it more importance than it deserves. He is not at all affected by the world. This is called dissolving the world and the mind into Atma. Dissolution of mind is Amani Bhava. Dissolution of world is Aprapanchi Bhava. Next slide. We all know the pot clay example. We know that the pot is only a name given to a particular form of clay. This dissolution is through understanding only, even when the experience of the dissolved object or pot continues. And this dissolution continues in spite of the experience of the object or the pot. Concluding, we know that the behavior of both minds are very different. It is really worth knowing the enlightened and disciplined mind, as only this mind experiences non-duality or freedom. Thank you. Hari Om.
Another very important Karika, very nicely experienced about this whole entity of what is the distinction. See, once the mind is not there, for example, in deep sleep, I don't have samsara. On the other hand, there is a super deluxe yogi, who was able to destroy his mind or overcome his mind through a lot of abhyasa and through vairagya. Now, what is the distinction between a person? This has been very nicely described in this Karika, very nicely explained by Sharmila. And Bhagwan again, Ramana speaks about Manolaya and Manonasha. Whenever there is Laya vilashane ubhaya rodane. Whatever is Laya comes back again when a person wakes up. But Laya gatam punar bhavati no mritam. Once a person has attained to Manonasha, it is not going to come back. And this is spoken as Nashta Manasam Utkrishta Yogina. Such a person who has mastered his mind. Let me share one story which will tell you about the subtle difference and to understand what is the state of no mind. There was a great Sufi saint called Sibli, and Sibli was describing what are those events in his life that brought out his enlightenment. He had a great master called Junaid. This is just an illustration because Junaid was at home. His wife was beside him, and from a distance he could see Sibli coming. Sibli was on the verge of enlightenment, and seeing Sibli come home, in tradition in Islamic communities, the moment a man enters, the woman would cover her face with a veil. The great master Junaid remarks to his wife, there is no need to cover yourself because Sibli has come and Sibli has attained to a state of no bodiness. Now, Sibli heard this, that his master has declared him to be a nobody, has declared him to be enlightened. And hearing his master's, he suddenly becomes emotional and he breaks down into tears. Suddenly, Junaid tells his wife, oh, Sibli has come, now you can cover yourself. Now, Sibli was remarking later on to his students, he says, there was still a subtle mind that my master has recognized that I have become a no mind. Now, I want you to see this distinction, how you have to move from a state of mind to a state of no mind. The last Karika today will be explained by Nilima. Nilima, please.
Jai Gurudev. Let us see 35th Karika. लीयते हि सुषुप्ते तत् निगृहीतं न लीयते तदेव निर्भयं ब्रह्म ज्ञानालोकं समन्ततः. Meaning, indeed, that mind becomes dormant in sleep. The disciplined mind does not become dormant. That mind is Brahma itself, which is fearless and which consists of the light of consciousness all around. In the present verse, we are seeing condition of mind in both states, in deep sleep and nirvikalpa samadhi. In first two padas, like liyate hi sushupte, tat nigruhitam na liyate. In the case of a sleeper, the mind is physically dissolved to causal form. But in the case of a gnani, a yogi in samadhi, the mind is not physically dissolved, but it is sublated with the knowledge of Atma Satya Anubhudena or Advaita Brahma. Mind is quietened with this knowledge. Mind becomes free of thoughts in Nirvikalpa Samadhi, as avidya is burnt in the fire of knowledge. And mind becomes Amani Bhava, no mind. And mind realizes intuitively what we are calling the mind is nothing but Brahma. The 4 lessons of Mandukya Karika about the world is applied to the mind also. The existence and the origination of the mind is to be negated. And the appearance and the experience of the mind should be accepted. In the next slide, mind due to ignorance or mithya, it is divided into subject and object. Mind in case of sleep, all vasanas, samskaras, avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, ahankara, and ignorance are dissolved in causal form or seed form. In gnani, enlightened condition of the mind is sublated with the knowledge of Atma eva Satyam. Like clay alone is the truth, and pot is nothing but name and form. Jnani reaches no mind state or Amani Bhava. And Jnani intuitively realizes that any mental conditions in Antakarana is Chaitanya Atma alone. In the next slide. Tadeva Nirbhayam Brahma. Jnanalokam Samantataha. Just in a sleep, while dreaming, subject gets afraid of object tiger. Later on, when he is awake, realizes that mind itself had become both subject and object. These are 2 types of mala. Subject and object are 2 types of mala. Jnani sees this distinction is caused due to avidya, which is the cause of fear. Enlightened mind realizing oneness with, then Nitya Shuddha Brahma becomes free of fear. Mind intuitively realizes mind itself is a pure Chaitanya. Jnana Aloka means by the light of this knowledge. Samantataha, which is total pervasiveness, such homogeneous consciousness pervades each corner of the mind, like Surya, sun rays. Though it is one huge light source, its rays pervades entire space. Or we can see in another example like clay in the pot. The next slide. Gnani realizes there is no subject-object division in mind. All which is present is one homogeneous consciousness, Atma alone. And Atma, its nature is all pervasiveness. Samantata, like sun is one huge prakashaka. Its sun rays pervading everywhere. So too Atma, it's only one non-dual consciousness which self-illuminates and pervades everywhere, including manaha, each corner of the mind. Like space is all pervading, so too the whole mind is nothing but this all
pervading consciousness or Chaitanya. Like clay occupies entire pot, so do all there is one Chaitanya in both consciousness and unconsciousness mind, even if one knows it or one does not know himself. Jai Gurudev.
Thank you, Nilima, for a nice description of what happens, when the mind is not there. When the mind is not there, the mind has become one with Brahman. What is the difference between a state of sleep of all of us, the ignorant person, and the state of a person who is an enlightened person? The state of a Rama while he's asleep or a Ravana is one and the same. But then you will realize when they wake up, what a difference there is between these two states. When a person has attained to Amani Bhava through Abhyasa and Vairagya, a person has attained to a state where the mind has become so clear, free from all ignorance, free from all conditioning, free from all programming. We realize when we wake up on a particular day, all the previous programming has come to our mind. And that is why the more we are able to refine our mind to be free from all programmings, that is what is the state of Amani Bhava. So in conclusion, what is this Amani Bhava and coming to Asparsha Yoga? It is a state of awareness in which the mind is empty of all thoughts, all emotions, and all past conditioning. It allows us to experience the reality in its purest form. Gautama Buddha calls it yata bhutam, to be able to see a thing as such, called true suchness, to be like a mirror, to not to retain anything, not to reject anything, but to reflect everything as it is. No mind is not a state of absence of mind, but a state where the mind is not contaminated by past or future anxieties or past experiences. A state when a person is fully available at the present and to be able to experience this moment as it is. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thank you, Hegde sir, and all speakers of the day for your active participation in this divine journey. We shall meet in the next class of Gift, session 49, on Monday, 21st October. Now, it's time to conclude the session with Shanti Mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om